Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. Thank you guys out there for joining us. As I say each and every time, I know that you guys have got lots of choices on how you spend your time online in these days, and it feels like it only continues to get more and more challenging because there's more and more stuff that comes at you every day on trying to steal your time and energy. So we appreciate you guys spending time with us. Today, we are joined by a CEO. I think Mateo is the founder, but definitely the CEO of Voodoo Brewing. And I'm going to let Mateo talk a little bit about his background and history before we jump into kind of what he gets to do for a living with the brewing company. So, Mateo, why don't you give our audience a little bit of a background? Who are you? Give long walks on the beach, romantic novels, all of that kind of stuff, because our audience is curious. They want to know. They want to know more about you.
No, well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me. I'm a 39-year-old that resides in Erie, Pennsylvania. I am from this area originally. We went to school in Sagertown, my brother and I, and both decided that during college that we would go to opposite coasts. He went to California, and I went to New York. And during that time, did some studying abroad, traveled the country, the world, came back, and ultimately started a business with my roommate doing event staffing and event production.
Okay.
So entered into the event hospitality space and had a lot of fortunate, success early on with that business, and was in my early 20s and looking to invest in things. So my brother and I, as long as with my roommate and a couple buddies, we bought a bar in our hometown in Meadville.
That's always a wise thing to do in your 20s is go buy a bar.
Yeah, we figured at the worst case, we're at least saving money on ourselves, right?
Yes.
And through that opportunity, we had met the local brewery, which was Voodoo, and my brother would build some programming at the bar with him, and started showing up at the brewery doing some volunteer work, and found himself on the brew platform. My brother was going to school in USD for biochemistry, and was transferring over to Pitt University to work with us on not only the bar, but the expansion plan we had, which was going to be to put a brewery in. And through this opportunity, found that the brewing company was falling on some pretty hard financial times and was ultimately going to be bankrupt. So he called me one day. I was still living in New York at the time, and said, "Hey, I've got an idea on how we might be able to get this brewery thing going a little faster." So I came back and met with the owner, and we put together a plan to essentially take over his business. This was 2011. Started officially January 1, 2012. And Kurt focused very heavily on brewing operations and the recipes and liquid. I focused on the business and trying to get everything renegotiated, consolidated, and worked on the initial direct to retail space, which was at the original brewery downtown Meadville, still there today. It took us about 6 months, and we built that first pub. And it was a really exciting time for us because retail, restaurant, hospitality was kind of in my blood. Felt really great about our product, and brought a couple of our worldly experiences to the way that the pub ran. No hostess, no busboys, no tableside service. Everything was order at the bar, pick up at the window. So it was really unique.
It's a very European style.
Exactly. It was, long communal tables, everything was almost to feel like a home away from home. Very like a shabby chic with a little twist of industrial kind of vibe to it. A lot of everything we did before we really even got trendy was this like repurposed, reclaimed, reused kind of design. Those elements are throughout the entire space, and we still do that today. But no, we opened the first tap room. This was summer of 2012, and found success with that, and figured what's the next closest biggest city we can kind of replicate this. And the state of Pennsylvania just passed some laws after a long time of not adjusting any of these really old liquor laws. They had a big reform that happened on the liquor law side here in PA, and it allowed us to, as a brewery, to have 2 satellite locations. And we were one of, if not the first brewery to use a satellite license as a retail opportunity. And we opened up our second location in Homestead, Pittsburgh, 2014. And there's still a yellow line down the middle of that bar where the night before we opened, the PLCB enforcement officer had come in and said, hey, the jury's out on this and you guys almost got away with it, but you're not allowed to do for on-site sales. It's for off-premise
Oh,
only.
wow.
So we reconfigured the licensing of the establishment. So everything on the one side of the line was on-premise and everything on the other side of the line was off-premise. And you had to grab that beer and take it across the line yourself. And then you were on private property and you were drinking a beer and that was up to you. And, we collected the payment and did all the transaction on the other side of the line. And that went on for quite some time until they finally were like, you know what, this is actually really good for breweries, and we think it's a really good opportunity for breweries to grow in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're let folks use these as satellite pub locations as well as satellite distribution locations. So it's a green light.
When you guys bought it, was it just a brewery that sold at retail and they had no like real on-premise, retail business? And I say no, maybe there was a beer club and those kind of things, but like as a general rule, were most people consuming the product before you guys got there, from a retail establishment? Or, talk to me a little bit about that because that sounds super interesting.
Yeah, that was pretty much the model. So he was originally just selling the beer through distribution. So you're selling it to a wholesaler. Wholesaler then's getting different PODs for the product, whether it's restaurants or taverns, bars, sports clubs, whatever. And that was the only way to get the product. And it was really interesting because when I first took over the business and we're starting to get the retail going, our wholesaler was in Erie. And the local beer distributor didn't even have our beer. So people would want to buy our beer and go to the distributor that's 3 blocks away from the brewery and couldn't buy our beer. So we just had to really reorganize, the way that the system worked. At that time, believe it or not, I think like 80% of the beer we made was going in a truck to Philadelphia and being sold out there.
Very interesting. Well, and I always wonder, I know we joked about some of the laws changing and it always just is interesting to me because I guess the authorities are trying to figure out, one, how to tax it and make sure that they make their money. But also what was the purpose of only giving you a license that you had to walk across this off premise versus on premise? It just seems so foolish to me, especially in the year, 2023 with now, at least here where I live, COVID, like almost all of the rules, it feels like kind of went away because people wanted to be able to consume, even stuff that had an on-premise license off premise.
Yeah. Well, it was complete chaos back then. When they passed Act 49, there was so much that it rewrote the history book in Pennsylvania as far as liquor law. So not only did Harrisburg not quite understand exactly everything that was written and what the intent was, but there's some black and white language in there. And then there's other people that are in charge of enforcement that don't always necessarily agree on that
with
language.
what's on the books.
Exactly. So, we were definitely, taking a shot in a gray area for a minute. And ultimately, like I said, it did pay off. But with that in mind, we just wanted to keep doing tap rooms. So we did a third one, 2017 in Erie. Then we built our production facility that same winter, opened Q1 of 2018. Did another tap room in there. They gave us 2 more GSs because we now had 2 brewing locations. So we did more pubs. We did Grove City. We did Lancaster. We ended up doing a really big project down in the North Shore of Pittsburgh. That was just in 2022. So it's been
and for the most part, were all of these just brew facilities with some light food, or did they have like a full pub style I can eat and get my beer kind of thing?
We were big fans of the full dining experience.
Okay.
So we were a kitchen with a nice food program that took that European Americanized Americana food and paired really great quality food with our beers. And we only brewed at the original brewing facility until we built the production facility in 2017. And even to this day, all the beer is brewed in just those 2 breweries, and they both are in Meadville. All the rest of the locations are brew pubs, which are just basically retail restaurants.
Got ya. So I am going to get in trouble. So I only know one other person that's from Erie, Pennsylvania. He happens to be a multi-time guest, and so he recently moved down south. But I got to give a shout out to my friend Jim Roddy because he's been on the show a couple times, and he and I would talk about life in Erie. And so I'll have to hit him up about the fact that I got the privilege to talk to you, because I promise you, his family's been to the brewing, to your guys' Erie location. Quite frankly, until I met him, which probably been about 10 years, I had no idea where Erie, PA was even, until he was telling me that that was where he lived. And I mean, again, he listens to the show religiously, and he'll text me different comments. And so shout out to Jim Roddy. You'll have to, maybe I can connect you guys when he's back up that way. He moved down to Raleigh about a year and a half ago. And so he's no longer, I think his wife got tired of Erie, PA winters.
Yeah,
And
that happens.
I have a feeling there's lots of people that get tired of those kind of winters, if we're being truthful. So you guys had stayed primarily in kind of the Pennsylvania market, kind of grew organically. Talk to me a little bit about kind of even the growth from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3. You've been there for, throughout the growth phases outside of before you guys got to franchising out of state. Cause I want to get to that a little bit, and kind of what did you guys even learn as you guys were going from 1 to 2 and even 1 to 2 brewing facilities, all of those kind of things. Let's talk a little bit, Mateo, about kind of what does that look like when you guys are getting beyond kind of the first location, and you guys can be there, see it, feel it, know what's going on, versus now you're at multiple locations. If you can bring me back, kind of 5 or 6 years, and I know that's probably 4 lifetimes ago with COVID in the middle of that, but at the same time, I love kind of hearing the success and what you guys learned, and maybe help somebody else that's going, looking to open up a second store, and what could they learn from your experience, some of the mistakes you might have made, and some of the things you guys thought you did well.
Absolutely. I mean, throw 2022 and all that out the window. It doesn't matter. I mean, I still remember very vividly, what we did, because at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur or any business owner, that's doing really, frankly, any type of growth or expansion, or trying to understand their model, what you do, you have to do very intentfully. You have to have tons of intent. You have to know exactly what it is you're trying to do, what your goals are.
Mm-hmm.
We felt like we had a niche in the restaurant space, because there weren't a lot of local breweries making the kinds of beer we were producing, and then pairing that with these experiences.
Yeah.
And I like to think of visiting a Voodoo tap room as an experience. I mean, everything from the hand curated music we play, to the audio messaging that's rolled into that, to the design and layout of the tap rooms, the vibe and feel that we create, the culture that we try to resonate through our staff. And you pair that with, an excellent community tie. We're involved in a lot. I mean, even like the shirt I'm wearing today, like hashtag Team Arc, I mean, we're a big proponent of a lot of our local charities and nonprofits. The Arc of Crawford County is a big partner at the brewery. We have 3 individuals that are full-time employees at the brewery that work with us. And that is replicated throughout our system. It's a requirement. Actually, there's a community engagement plan
Oh,
that's
wow. That's
it's a
awesome.
requirement of every one of our locations. So I've always said craft beer without community is just beer.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece of what I feel like rolls into that overall overarching experience. And then you pair that with great, super smart food, that's interesting and locally sourced and good for you. I mean, a good example, like, we only use high oleic safflower oil in our fryers, because we feel like that's something we want to make sure that we're, keeping the food at an elevated level, that's going to have, nutrients, and it's going to be good for people. So we're just trying to keep that consistent throughout. And again, we had that kind of mapped out from the beginning. We're going to continue to do these this way, and we're having proof of concept time and time again. So at the end of the day, building out restaurants, especially when you are doing it, very deliberately, and you have a very clear vision, things really fall into place, and you
Mm-hmm.
just kind of stick to your plan, or you stick to what is important to your design and your methodology behind it, and then the beer comes with it. So expanding restaurants, you need product,
Yeah.
and that really kicked into our plans and what we needed to do with the um, uh, brewing facility as far as making more product.
Well, and I
So,
think, I mean, the one thing that I hear you talking about that I love is that it's not just about the beer, because you get the beer geeks that'll open up a tap house, and the food is an afterthought, the ambiance is an afterthought. It's all about the beer, which, what, quite frankly, is part of what makes your concept what it is. And at the same time, if you're not just a beer geek that only wants to go for the beer and what the new brew of the month is, or whatever those kind of things that you got going on, you've got to have something else that's part of the experience. So I love that you guys have considered that as you guys have gone beyond kind of store one, store two. Where did the beer come from? So you guys were kind of like event people, you did food, you bought this brewery. Like, talk to me a little bit about kind of what you guys have learned brewing your own beer, because it's a science. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not just this, I mean, I don't know, say regrettably, because it wasn't regrettable at the time, but I did the kegs in college, and in my dorm room kind of thing, whatever those things were where you were home brewing. And I've known lots of people that have done the home brew thing, but at the end of the day, you've got to create unique experiences with beer. It takes chemistry. You talked about kind of your staff learning those things. Talk to me a little bit about what that experience has been like, because it's not just food, it's not just the ambiance, but it's also about the beer.
well, absolutely, and again, like that was the intent. So like we bought this bar and we were going to put a brewery in it.
Mm-hmm.
My brother would during college in the summers he'd come out and work with my business in New York City, and we were homebrewing all summer long. We were making stuff and trying out recipes, and we're having a lot of success with it, having a lot of fun with it. And we're like, well, we've got the bar. It's got what we would need to at least start like a little nano brewery and see how that goes. And I mean, we definitely jumped in, um, head first, taking
Mm-hmm.
over a 10-barrel brewery.
Oh, wow.
At that time, that was already in financial, turmoil. It was a big leap,
Mm-hmm.
but I was confident. I mean, my brother is one of the most talented brewers that is out there, and he has a relentless, absolutely relentless dedication to the quality of the beer and the sourcing of the ingredients. Even right now, like he brought me back this hat last week from Selection. They went to hop selection out in Pacific Northwest. We go.
Okay.
He picks the lots of the hops from the farms that he prefers.
Oh,
They go out
wow.
there and sample a dozen different lots of all of the predominant hops we use throughout the year, and it goes all the way down that ingredient sourcing to water chemistry and all the bits and pieces that go from there to the finished product. And I mean, even in the equipment that you purchase, and
Yeah.
trying to eliminate as many parts per billion of dissolved oxygen as you possibly can, and there's just so many layers and levels to having a refined, high quality finished product. And that was honestly kind of how that evolved, was just always being super attentive, again with a willful dedication to the goal, which was we want to have one of the best products out there.
Well,
And
and
then to
as
go,
time goes on, I'm sure you guys learn, serving it in the property out of a keg is a different conversation than shipping a keg that might, be on a truck somewhere, traveling different locations, to bottling it. You know, did you guys learn anything as that? I've sat with brewmasters, and again, they've sat and talked to me about it, and it's again, they get into this headspace of not a whole lot different than wine or any other food purveyors. Like, it's an experience. And so talking about even the way you serve it, the glass that you serve it in, the temperature that you serve it in, talk to me a little bit about how you guys have created that consistency. Because once you get beyond, and again, we talked about kind of one or two locations, and you guys can be there and you guys can see it, to now you guys are at a place where you guys are franchising, you guys have got multiple locations across the country. And I want to get into that in a few minutes. But as you guys are getting beyond that, you guys have to figure out how to deliver the same product. So if they come to the main brewery versus some of the other ones, that you guys, it's your name on it. It's yours, your brother's name. It's their beer. It's what you guys have created. Talk to me a little bit about what that process has been like over the last, number of years as you guys have grown that.
well, I mean, for us, I think it was when we were building our sixth location, we very deliberately started jotting everything down. Okay.
Okay.
From start to finish, how does Voodoo build a tap room? How does Voodoo build a cold room? How does Voodoo build the bar? You know, we need paint colors. Okay, well, let's partner with Sherwin-Williams, and we're going to get 10 custom colors that are voodoo green, voodoo blue, voodoo purple. Like, let's find a way to essentially bring in scalable solutions to what we are doing. Finding national partners that can provide the quality and have the attention to detail that we're looking for, to ensure that every single one of our stores is done the way we intend. So really, at the end of the day, like, a scalable solution is kind of always our approach to how you can build in consistent quality as you grow.
Yeah.
Finding the right wholesale partner is a great way to ensure that your beer is cared for. It's something as simple as that. There are definitely wholesale relationships out there that sometimes are not necessarily ideal, and they may not have the ability to execute, something like what we're doing, because it is very unique, and it does take a lot of additional time and resources to supply, an on-premise location with this type of volume. At this type of consistency. So again, I think really for us, it was just, you have to dissect each piece of the puzzle and break it down and rebuild it, and make sure that as you're putting it back together again, that it's scalable and it makes sense, that you can do it on a national level.
Yeah, and I think that that's really where I'd love to take the conversation towards the latter part of our conversation, is really talk to me about getting beyond Pennsylvania. So I know you and I talked prior to me hitting the record button. Everything that's in PA, I think, is all your guys' stuff that you guys have built out in corporate restaurants. But once you guys got outside of Pennsylvania, it turned into franchising. It turned into having a paint a vision for the people that you've got out there as to what you want their experience to look like. You talked a little bit about community involvement. You talked about the environment. You talked about all of these things. Talk to me a little bit about that first step to get beyond that, and kind of how you guys have scaled that. Because writing it down is great. Giving somebody a manual that says this is what it needs to look like. Getting paint colors is fine, but that's hard. It's hard. It's hard to get beyond. It's hard to even get beyond 2 restaurants, nonetheless, to the numbers that you guys have gotten to, and the multiple states and such. So talk to me a little bit about what that process looked like, and how you guys got there, and how do you guys ensure success?
Sure. I mean, so we, again, wanted to go outside of Pennsylvania. We did Meadville, Erie, we did Pittsburgh. We're like, okay, let's look at Cleveland. That'd be great. Let's do a tap room in Cleveland. We very quickly came to realize that it was almost impossible for us to explore that as a legitimate option, because in order to put a tap room in another state, we either had to put a brewery in it, or we would have to do some type of license agreement, which essentially, if you're going to go through a license agreement, it's essentially doing a franchise.
Yep.
So we really started researching, okay, well, what would this look like if we were to franchise? And we wanted to bring the Voodoo vibe and the culture and the opportunity and the experience to other communities. Cleveland being one that we really had in our sights. And we were like, okay, well, let's really look at how we can achieve this. And we started putting together some initial chats with iFranchise, and we were talking with those guys, and we built what we felt to be a pretty deliberate model for franchising our tap rooms. And we found a group that was very eager to be our first franchisee, and they did the first store in Cleveland Heights. And we did 2 other stores right behind those that were in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So we've got some corporate stores and some franchises in the state.
Okay.
But that caught the attention of Raintree Development. And when we hooked up with the Raintree guys, it was game over.
Yeah, no, they do a great job of finding franchisees that are, people that are interested in a brand like yours to go scale it. I've actually talked to quite a few of their clients, and it's been fun to watch, because not that they give you a blueprint, but they help you along the way to say, these are the things you guys aren't thinking about that you probably should be thinking about, or at least that's been my experience talking with them.
Yeah, for sure. And that was that was a very calculated move. So what we did is we had them out to the brewery, and after, we didn't drink any beers at all. We were just, we were just talking. And, we
the best conversations happen after a couple of them, right?
Well, exactly. We got to the point where, like, guys, this could be, the Brent uses the word galactic. He's like, this could be galactic. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, all right, how much equity would it take if I told you I get you 10 locations in the next 12 months? I said, well, okay, well, we could talk about that. Let's wait. Let's, maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. We've been drinking beers, but we had essentially an equity deal as part of our licensing entity,
Okay.
based on the success of selling and awarding so many locations. And without going into like super detail, I think they achieved it in like 4 or 6 months. They hit the
Wow.
benchmark.
That's pretty fantastic.
And then they just exploded that out of the water by like 8 times that number. So obviously, like, they are very good at what they do, but they saw a unique opportunity with the Voodoo franchise model that they really clung on to, and they felt was going to be, kind of like one of the next big things in franchising. And that comes down to, I think, a lot of things in a post-COVID environment. People are really looking at trying to either go into business for themselves or try something different, or have a little more security. They're looking to diversify, their investments. There's a lot of things out there. You've got a lot of younger entrepreneurs that are looking to invest in different opportunities. And, franchising always had kind of like a bad connotation to it. At least me in my 20s looking at investments, like I would have never considered it. But we've got people in their late 20s. Sorry,
You're good.
Sorry, I'm going to start that back up. We've got people coming in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're really interested in the fact that we have kind of like the anti-franchise franchise.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting time in the franchise space with what we had to offer. So
Well, and I think the more I talk to people that are looking to get people franchised, it's not the same cookie cutter stamped, Subway franchise, McDonald's franchise. You give them a bunch of money, they do their deal. Like, there's a whole bunch that goes into it, and creating unique experiences that you guys have. It's awesome from that perspective, and it's not just your standard, your standard brand that everybody might normally see.
Right.
So
no, it is. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's meant to be different.
Yeah.
And then I think what's also different about it is we want these stores to be anchors of their communities, be facets of their communities, be intertwined in their communities. So you can't just pick something up and just relocate it and set it down. Like, okay, let's make this fit. No, like, let's design something and let's adapt it to make it fit. Let's make sure that it fits. It needs to fit.
Yeah, where does that come from? I mean, is that something that's near and dear to you and your brother? Or talk to me a little bit about where that comes from, because I love. I mean, especially at the beginning of COVID, and I tell people this all the time. I mean, truly, restaurants are at the center of the community. It's where people meet. It's where people celebrate. It's where people connect. It's where people do business. There's so many different things that happen around restaurants, and for that 12-month period or however long it was, that was a gap in the community, and now, coming out of that, I think we're at a place where people still commune around a table, around a cold beverage, and are able to do that. But if all you're doing is selling beer and selling food, and you're not part of the community, you're not participating in the local schools and the local sports programs and all of those kind of things, to your point, it's just beer, it's just a restaurant, and it's a nameless, faceless deal, versus truly this community would be missing something if the Voodoo Brewing Company closed down in a city here or there, and you want to be part of that. So where did that come from? Is that just kind of your guys' upbringing? Is that just a belief that you guys had? Talk to me a little bit about where that came from.
I guess it's because we don't know any other way.
I love it.
I can't imagine doing it any other way. And if you're doing it in a different way and you're finding,
I got a couple brands I can point you towards if you really want to know, but that's a different story. Off camera, off recording.
It's gonna be short lived.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
And frankly, I'll be honest, because I'm super candid. It's selfish.
Yeah.
And like, I think you need to have just the right amount of selflessness to be successful.
Yeah.
Especially in the restaurant space, because you're right. They're gathering places. That's where people go. I mean, you look way back in the beginnings of time, where like any meeting that meant anything was over a table with a pint.
Yeah. Yeah. And, no, absolutely.
That hasn't really altogether changed in all this time. So you kind of stick to the fact that that's something that and we've always looked at too, like, yeah, tourism's great and people visiting is great, and people coming to do like a beer trail vacation is cool, and people coming in for our Good Vibes Fest and visiting, drinking 50 different breweries beers in one day is cool. But like, the guys that work at the tool shop, and the hand surgeon up at the hospital, they comes in on a Monday and buys dinner and a beer and pays your electricity bill in January when everybody stops drinking because it's cool. I mean, again, you can do whatever you want, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, you've got people that are just committed to just patronizing your business and enjoy your business, and I don't know why you wouldn't reciprocate.
Yeah.
It's just, to me,
Well, and
it's just,
everybody likes to go to the place where it's kind of that old Cheers factor, you get the bartender, the servers, they kind of all know. Nobody wants to go into a nameless, faceless place. And so creating that community and knowing that I'm going to see the person at the sports field, or I'm going to see them, at the grocery store, that's in the community, that they're not, shipping money off to some other place because, you know what, I don't really want to live in that community, but I'm going to own this restaurant there. There's something to be said for that. So I love that you guys make that a priority amongst the breweries.
Yeah, and it really doesn't take that much. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do very small acts of kindness or donations. For instance, like, we have a gift basket program that we are constantly essentially making and distributing, baskets for silent auctions and fundraiser events and all types of different, things. And it's so simple, and it doesn't take a lot of time or money, and it really has an impact. And even if it's something as small as that, I mean, it scales from there. But
Yeah.
just to be able, our policy really is just to say, like, we try to say no to no one. Like, we at the very minimum, we'll do what we can. Try to spread, even if it's a little, to a lot of different places, to have as much impact as you can. Because I understand too, like, businesses have ups and downs, and just that should be a constant.
Yep. No, absolutely. Before we get into how people can get in touch with Mateo, where's Voodoo come from? Like, where does the name come? Is it something that you guys inherited when you guys bought the brewing company, or was it an old brewery that you guys renamed? I'm always just intrigued about the origin stories, not only of the brand, but even the naming and where did it come from?
I love when I get this question because, well, number one, we didn't name the brewery. It was
Okay.
named that when we took it over in 2012.
Okay.
But I've never, and I will never, say where the name came from. It adds a lot to the mysticism behind the brand. And like, if you
Okay.
go on the internet, you Google like where the name came from, there's like 6 or 7 different stories, and they're all pretty good. And there's new ones that pop up out of nowhere. And like, it's kind of just been
That's
a little
awesome.
bit of the mystery behind the brand, is like, no one knows where the name came from.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
And I always like to ask this question: what's your favorite beer? What's your favorite food when you go into the stores? I got to ask because, for if I'm a brand new person that's never been, what do you recommend they check out? And then what do you actually enjoy having, both from a food and a beverage perspective?
Well, I'm a big seasonal eater drinker. I like to consume things, just my palate changes throughout the year. I mean, right now I've shifted completely away from IPAs. I'm into lagers big time. We have a beer right now called Schnitzengiggel, which is a Marzen Oktoberfest style beer.
Okay.
I really like it right now. That's kind of hitting real nice. I'm enjoying it. I just actually had a photo shoot before I left the brewery today, and I had that in the photo, and I might have sipped on it a little bit. And food wise, again, it rotates. We're just about to launch our fall menu for the season. But right now, in between the spring, summer, and fall, winter rollout, we roll out a Oktoberfest menu. And he has this incredible like pork sandwich.
Okay.
It's just awesome. It's like a schnitzel sandwich.
Okay.
It's just killer. And I couldn't even describe every ingredient that's in there, but I know for a fact he's got like like a homemade kraut
Okay.
that's just killer. And it just comes together really nice. And it's a limited time item, so that's what I've been enjoying on at this time of the year.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, how do people get in touch with you? How do people learn more if they're interested in bringing a Voodoo to their community? They're in that space of, you kind of talked about what you're looking for. You're looking for, people that are local and in the community and want to build a brand. that's going to help them out and help the community out. But if they want to learn more about you guys, where would you direct them?
I mean, the best place to learn more is just on our website.
Okay.
Whether you want to just have like a little soft inquiry and check it out, see what we're about a little more about the history and the story, it's there. If you want to find products, we list the wholesalers in the states that we distribute to. Try to find a place where you can buy it locally.
Okay.
If you're interested in opening up your own tap room, there's a link. It's called Own Your Own or Build Your Own or something like that. And it'll refer you to the division that handles the vetting process if you want to become an independent owner.
I love it. I love it. Well, Mateo, I appreciate you jumping on. I know, between photo shoots and drinking beer and, building a brand, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us and our audience. To our audience, guys, as I said on the onset, I know that you guys have got lots of choices, so I appreciate you guys spending time. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, please do so. Newsletter comes out once a month. You can subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on your favorite podcast player, depending upon your consumption method. Mateo, I can't wait to check it out. Like I said before we hit record, there's one maybe 30 minutes from me. So next time I'm down on that side of town, I gotta go check it out. I'll text you a selfie from the bar. Let you know what I thought of it. So thank you very much for being on the show, and to our listeners, make it a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.